Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I wanted to talk to you about some of the biggest mistakes I made when I started pursuing a more sustainable wardrobe about 2 years ago, because I think as we get closer to the new year, the concept or the desire to have a more sustainable wardrobe probably becomes more pronounced for most of us. So I hope you will find my mistakes and the lessons I learned from them helpful as you pursue your own sustainable wardrobe. This is such a tough one because if you think about it, whenever we make a decision, normally we want that decision to turn into action right away. When I made the decision about 2 years ago to stop buying fast fashion, I literally went into my closet and it was like, everything in here that is from fast fashion has to be decluttered, has to go, and it has to go right now. This process is not realistic, it's not enjoyable, and it's not economical for those of us that don't want to rack up a bunch of debt when it comes to buying clothes. Rebuilding our wardrobes for any reason is a process that should and will take time. In my frenzied rush to have a more sustainable wardrobe, I got rid of so many things that now I totally regret decluttering. We've probably all heard the saying that the most sustainable thing any of us can do is to actually wear our clothes, which doesn't mean that you have to wait until your fast fashion item is literally falling apart at the threads before you can replace it with a more sustainable option. But it does bring up the interesting point that you cannot shop your way to sustainability. I don't know why it took so long for this light bulb to go off in my head, but if you think about it, what is sustainable about chucking everything you own, even if your entire closet is filled with fast fashion, to only then go out and repurchase a bunch of new things, even if those new things are sustainably made? My problem was that I became fixated on the idea that I had to declutter every single item of fast fashion out of my closet if I wanted to have a sustainable wardrobe and if I wanted to be a sustainable person. Now, interestingly enough, that message really was coming across loud and clear from not all, but from many YouTubers, Instagrammers, bloggers who embrace a sustainable lifestyle in the sustainability articles I was reading. And even more interestingly, it came across from a lot of sustainable brands. And because I put myself in a position where I felt this urgent need to declutter all the fast fashion out of my entire closet, I then felt an enormous amount of pressure to then repurchase a more sustainable version of the fast fashion thing I was decluttering in a frenzy. And by doing that, I literally robbed myself of the joy of savoring the process of discovering a really beautiful, sustainable replacement for something in my closet. So for me, the process ended up feeling rushed, frenzied, and done under a lot of pressure, which was not fun at all. Oh my, over the years, I've gotten rid of some clothing simply because I had a bad memory attached to it. And I think we can all relate to this. More often than not, it's because we were in a bad relationship. We weren't happy with decisions we were making at the time. Maybe we even went through a legitimate trauma. But again, the knee-jerk reaction is, oh, that item of clothing reminds me of that tough time in my life. Therefore, I want it out of my sight. I want it out of my closet. In hindsight, I realized that the better option for me would have been to simply flip the narrative I had in my head. So instead of looking at that item of clothing and feeling guilty or feeling bad about myself, what I could have done was just focused on the fact that, hey, actually, I'm still here. Like, look at how far I've come since I was in that relationship, since that bad experience happened. And I don't think this is a one size fits all. Like, we all have to use discernment and wisdom when it comes to whether or not we want that thing still in our lives. But I think there's something to be said for taking the power away from that thing And again, focusing on the fact that, man, yeah, when I wore this sweater or these clothes 5 years ago, I was in a terrible relationship or I was making really dumb decisions. But look at how far I've come. Look at the victories I've had. Look at the self growth I've experienced. And so you see what we're doing here. The negative suddenly becomes a positive for us to celebrate. And by doing so, suddenly that item of clothing or even like our entire wardrobe becomes a reminder of our strength, our blessings, and how far we've come rather than our weaknesses or our lack. I talked about this in my recent decluttering mistakes video, but wow, the time, energy, and effort I wasted trying to find the perfect version of that thing from the perfect sustainable company that has perfect environmental standards was exhausting. I also very quickly realized that someone somewhere out there is going to have an opinion about any brand that advertises sustainable practices or ethically made clothes. And more often than not, that someone is never happy with what that company is doing. In other words, it's never good enough. Greenwashing is definitely a thing, but honestly, like I think at this point, it's pretty obvious if you go onto a brand's website and the language about their sustainability is super vague and it's really just a bunch of gobbledygook that makes no sense, or they have these like pie in the sky aspirations, such as by the year 2030, we want to be doing thus and so related to environmental or sustainable manufacturing practices. An example of this for me had to do with finding a pair of black leggings to replace the fast fashion ones I had purchased a couple years ago, which at this point were literally like falling apart at the threads. So it's like I'm looking for something that's made from natural fibers, which you guys know is my preference, or something that's made from like recycled plastic water bottles. Then I was trying to find a price point that was agreeable to me. Like I was willing to spend a little bit more, but I couldn't spend like $250 on one pair of leggings, right? So I started researching sustainable brands, which takes time. And then I also started like cross-referencing what some of those third-party, like independent rating websites and companies had to say about the sustainable company I was about to buy these leggings from. And once again, it very quickly dawned on me that, oh my gosh, nothing any company does is good enough in the eyes of these third-party raters, which again, like have value, and they produce these really helpful tools that help us kind of navigate to figure out what might ultimately be the better company to buy for. But the trap I fell into was believing that, oh my gosh, like I can't buy these leggings because all of a sudden somebody else is saying that their sustainability practices aren't up to snuff. And now I'm feeling guilty because if I buy these leggings, then I'm not like the world's best sustainable purchaser of fashion. And as I said, the process for just buying a simple pair of leggings became overwhelming, number one, but just absolutely exhausting. The point being, and the lesson I learned, is that all we can do is our best, right? Do the research and then make the decision, taking the information from like a third party rating website with a grain of salt. Because ultimately, I don't think that there is anything that's 100% perfectly sustainably made. Because if you think about it, the most sustainable thing any company can do is not make a new piece of clothing. Okay, guys, and the fifth mistake I definitely learned in pursuit of wanting to have a more sustainable wardrobe and also just wanting to embrace more sustainable shopping practices is forgetting that there's something to be said about the sustainability and even the joy of styling our clothing versus constantly shopping for new clothing. I have years of experience as a personal stylist for both men and women. Obviously, I have a YouTube channel dedicated to styling, but even me, sometimes I fall into the trap of just not getting into my closet, not reimagining how I'm wearing a certain piece. I tend to just wear it over and over and over again in the same way, which leads to closet fatigue. And it does not matter if your closet is filled right now with things from Forever 21 or Hermes, because if we don't learn how to style what we have, we're always going to run into closet fatigue, and that's going to make us feel like we need to buy more because our closet's boring and I have nothing to wear. To me, sustainability is all about learning how to style our clothing in multiple ways, right? So it's that versatility. But where styling becomes really fun is it just reinvigorates our closet, number one. It gets us excited about what we own because it's like, oh, okay, like I was wearing this sweater the same way with the same pair of jeans, but if I just switch up the bottoms or give it a little French tuck or do something, suddenly it feels brand new, right? And that paves the way for us to feel joyfully content with what we already own. It also just creates this excitement about getting dressed every day. That's not to say we never buy anything new or that we have to wait until a piece of clothing is legitimately like falling apart at the seams before we buy a replacement from a more sustainable brand. But it definitely takes the pressure off. The wardrobe I have now has taken about 2 years to build, quite literally from the ground up. Notice I said 2 years, not 2 weeks, not 2 months. 2 years. That's a long time to wait, but it's been worth it. When we take the pressure off of ourselves to buy in any type of frenzy, and when we get into our closets and play and style what we have instead of shop for something new all the time, it gives you time to discover sustainable brands that have an aesthetic that really speaks to you. It also gives you time to actually save up to buy that item instead of getting yourself into debt over the purchase of it. And it releases that pressure of feeling like you have to buy right now. Anytime we engage in a frenzied approach to buying, it just robs us of the joy of savoring that purchase. And when we're able to savor that purchase, we're also able to savor the newness of that item. When I buy anything fast, or quick, within like a day, I don't even remember what I bought. But again, taking the time to style our existing clothes instead of just constantly shopping for new is what eventually helps us curate a wardrobe that feels like us, that looks like us, that helps us get excited about getting dressed every day using what we have. And what's more sustainable than that? Okay, guys, that'll do it for some of the big mistakes I made in pursuit of a more sustainable wardrobe. I hope you found some of these lessons useful as you pursue this on your own. I'd be interested to hear in the comments down below some of the mistakes you have made over the years and some of the lessons you have learned from those mistakes. But in any event, thank you guys so much for spending your time with me today. I hope you're having a good one, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.